like 3 years ago, I had this dream and I say, hey, what is my spark? I wanted to find out, do something I really want to be passionate about it, right? Everybody wants to find their passion. And I reached my middle age. I got 2 kids, things I kind of settled down, but lost meaning, right? Lost passion, but just weird, But when you get older, you get a little bit weird. I think that it's just another birth, came out of me. Kind of like become a kid again, right? You mentioned about like a kid on the street. I love that analogy. I feel like that. So so that's kind of my humbleness is, hey, I'm going to become a new kid on the street, but I love to acquire the new domain knowledge where I never had that training before, which is how to deal with non-technical aspect, right? My goodness, I couldn't easily switch my hat because I couldn't find out my identity, okay? Now I looked back, there's definitely an identity crisis because for people who have been in the C-level or other domain experts, you gotta get on the journey about, hey, how do you wear a different hat, being an entrepreneur, right? This is like driving me nuts because I knew my comfort zone and I want to go back to my comfort zone, but I also want to grow, right? There's kind of a constant battle going on here. And it is kind of such a lonely stuff, like lonely journey, right? You couldn't share with your customer, you couldn't share with your co-founder or your team. And you have to be the one, like sort them through, figure out that. And then I think that's part of the training, when I looked back. And then anyway, I just feel like sometimes I needed someone to knock my door and just simply said that, Hui, you're overthinking.
So you're talking and I'm writing notes. I don't know if you see notes.
Oh,
That's
cool.
A bunch of notes where you're talking because part of it is one, particularly if you live in Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York, LA, though you choose to move to those cities because you're probably a type A asshole. You've always been top academically. You want to be perfect a lot of the times. And when you're young, that puts so much pressure on you. You just don't know it until you're burnt out. And
exactly.
So part of this is you can't get discovered in the audience. You got to get on stage, start talking. No one can know you're a thought leader till you start telling people what you think. And sometimes you think crazy things and that's okay. Because you can't lead if you're following directions.
I love that. I love that.
The hardest part I found, particularly for introverts.
Yes, I'm definitely introvert.
is that particularly if you're a founder, your whole role is sales. So you sell yourself first,
Yes.
know who you are. Then you're good product and service. So if you suck at presenting yourself, it's sort of like speed dating for money. I just defined prostitution. Hold on, let me rethink about that. But because that's
no, go ahead. Yeah.
Because a founder, particularly if you're trying to raise money, you're shaking a lot of VCs' hands. You're trying to get the crowd engaged. Which, if you've never been comfortable talking about yourself or about your project and selling something, that can be your biggest hurdle.
Yes.
So I wrote a note that perhaps it's not that you're feeling like a kid again, but rather you're confident in yourself. So for the first 30 years of my life, I'm super old now, I'm like 40. For the first 30 years of my life, I wasn't confident in myself, confident in my skin. I was just an asshole, but I wasn't a confident asshole. I was an asshole because I was insecure. Now, fast forward, I'm still an asshole, but I'm confident and I'm more secure in myself, which helps me operate a little bit better.
Right. Wow. That's very profound.
You touched upon it. I call them emotional deserts. So in 2019, I went to teach at Columbia and NYU at New York, and Columbia University, Morningside is right next to Harlem.
Wow.
So I spent like the summer in Harlem being a hot mess. But we live in a society where between your mobile device and your apps, you don't ever actually talk to a person.
Right.
You don't have, those human communications. We can trade information over digital mediums, but we're not having a real full-blown communication in person.
Right.
And so the bigger city you're in, New York, San Francisco, LA, the lonelier you are because of technology. It creates all these, they're not artificial barriers, but they're walls between you and human empathy, between you and human relations. And so most of my work with founders, they live in very big cities. They're overwhelmed because entrepreneurship is so difficult. I only recommend
competitive.
it to my enemies. Entrepreneurship sucks. It's super hard. I tell people, if you can get a job that helps you, that you can earn a living at and reach your human potential, don't ever start a business. It's the worst thing on the planet. It's true, because entrepreneurship has an even higher failure rate than the American dream. But if so when we work with founders, it is sometimes on the business side, because you're trying to flesh out their product market fit and help them raise money. But more often than not, it's just trying to align their internal force, their soul, with how lonely the journey can be when no one understands, hey, you bet your life savings and it failed. Right. And then you have to go explain that to your parents, your mom, your significant other, your friends who have 9-to-5 jobs. And then on the other side of the spectrum, the day after you bankrupt yourself, max out all your credit cards, you get an order. Last year I was super stressed, and then I got an order for $7 million randomly because one of the pokers we put in the fire came through. So you do this emotionally.
Right, up and down, yeah.
Some people, particularly if you like to have like a level life, well planned out. I love working with type A people because they're so like detail orientated. And then I get to tell them that life is illiterate. You can't read your well thought out, your well written plans. And so every so often life is like,
right.
And then you're like, oh my God. And it's I bring up like, we all had amazing plans for 2020, and life was like, hold my beer.
Right.
Just keep that in mind, that we do live in emotional deserts.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You can still reach out. And if you're a founder, reach out to folks because you need a social network for moral and spiritual support, not only financial support.
I love this, the new concept, not new concept, but it's a concept like social capital, right? Like networking. And then here's I recently like really pay attention to that, because I knew this is the area I don't have any experience like reaching out people, like even launching this talk show, it took me like it was very interesting because I love tech. I say, hey, I'm gonna learn how to set up the studio at home, right? And then just have fun about like first YouTube like YouTuber, how to be a YouTuber like that. But it turns out to be a very good training for me to be on the stage. And this time the stage is a virtual stage, right? And it has so many profound impact, because I can reach out to people that they're really reputed and then build the relationship directly. And also like they are bring their knowledge, benefit for our community. So it's kind of like compound effect. I never dreamed about it. And it just said that, I mean, my original idea is just say, hey, I just want to figure out how to be a YouTuber. After that, it's okay. I don't want to build a community. I don't want to But in the end, that's the right move. It's just fascinating for, I don't know, it kind of pushed me towards that sales, towards be on the stage and then get comfortable on that. And I still remember the first speaker I interviewed, she's a rapper from UK. And I never know the rapper, rapping music stuff, but she's so lovely. She said, "Hui, I love to support you." So I end up to give some kind of Amazon cards to my first speakers, the first batch. But anyway, so that's my little story about sometimes you just need to do it. You don't need to overthink, whether you are capable or not capable. It's just the right thing to do, and just do it, right?
So I'm taking notes here, and I'm an anthropologist, so when I talk to my subjects, humans, I'm taking notes.
Okay.
So I'm point out something very interesting.
Okay.
You have 2 kids. You're a little bit older in life. You studied computer science, I want to say. Yeah. Right. And and after decades in school, you stumbled across this thing called social capital.
Yes.
I think it's hilarious because I work with a lot of technical people, and they tell me all the time, like, Samson, you code for shit. I'm like, yes, that's why in emergencies you call me, because there's a difference. I tell people that being able to code in Python, R, etc., is cool, but you know it's even more important? Being able to communicate what the fuck you just built. Because people, I know tons of coders, right? And they all cannot communicate. And the funny thing is, I think particularly for computer scientists, there's comfort in code.
Everybody have a comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah, there's comfort in the methodology. There are answers. There are ways you can figure stuff out. You can go on GitHub and look something up. However, when it goes to communicating the impact of your product, what your vision is,
yes,
that's stuck in your head, and you got to get it out of your mouth, and that has to come from your heart. Particularly for the amount of effort that goes into building your product. And so I love it because I have a friend. She went to Stanford for undergrad, INSEAD for grad school over in France. She speaks. She's a Black lady from West Virginia, but she speaks English, of course, but she speaks standard Mandarin and French. And so one day I'm in DC. She's like, hey, do you want to go to happy hour with me? I was like, yeah, sure. She's going to meet her INSEAD friends. She's like, man, my Mandarin is so much better than my French. And I was like, yeah, I can barely speak English. But you see all these technical people who learn a technical skill, they're at the top of their game. And in order for them to evolve, they have to develop emotional awareness. And I find that to be the funniest evolution. Like, you're a caterpillar when you're a highly technical person, but you don't know how to evolve into a butterfly or a dragon until you develop your emotional intelligence. And so I love it when I meet people like yourself who are like, oh my God, let me tell you what happened. Start talking to people, your social capital. It's so crazy. You're right. It's hard to love yourself when you don't trust yourself, because you may have never given yourself permission to fail. Particularly if you're a type A asshole, you know, you always got to be at the top of your class. But the moment you give yourself permission to fail and you stop aiming for perfection and aim for like happiness, because happiness is not perfection. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to be happy versus perfect. So particularly if you're in the understanding, you're in the business and technology field, you're like, Samson, if there's a comma or a semicolon out of place, this won't work. I'm like, no, really, roll out an MVP, start selling it, and as you get money, hire other people. And not that you're going to make that their problem, but you're going to give them the responsibility to help make your vision come true. So give yourself permission to fail, and it relieves so much stress off of you.